Recording in progress.
Call to order the St. Joseph City Council meeting of September 18th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2, public comments. Anyone wishing to address the City Council on items not listed in the agenda, please step to the podium. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, approval of the agenda. Questions or concerns, changes? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Item 4, consent agenda.
Move to approve.
I'll second. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any additions or changes? Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just got one question on donations.
Well, let's pull that then for separate
Well, it's just a
conversation.
question. It doesn't- I don't-
Let's pull it for a separate. You're talking about gambling report or donations?
Well, donations. Yeah,
4E.
It's under the same thing.
Okay, so consent agenda is approved except for maybe D and E. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. For D and E, Bob?
I just got a question on the $7,000 donation of election equipment from the city of Minneapolis. Just curious on that one.
Kind of scored.
Kayla?
Yeah, so I came across a post that the city of Minneapolis was giving away election booths. And
Okay.
we were in need of new ones because some of the ones that we had were old. So I reached out and I think, Ryan, we got like 35, 33, 35, something like that. So, and they run about $200 a piece.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
1980 election booths? or-
No, they're actually newer, like our, our nice blue ones, yes.
Okay.
So,
I need a motion on both for E and D.
So moved.
Motion and second, consent agenda items for D and E. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5. Who, is this Kayla or David, or the public hearing for move venue? Thank you, Kayla.
yes, so before you this evening is an amendment to the special event permit that was approved back in July for Rocktoberfest. The reason for the amendment is the applicant has requested to move the location of the event. Previously, it was on the parcel that the festival's typically on by St. Joseph Catholic School in that parking lot. And the new venue is actually to the east of that, in the other church parking lot, the same parking lot that Joetown Rocks is in. In addition to that location change, the applicant's also requesting that the parking spots along Minnesota Street from College Ave to that alley be blocked off for drop-offs and pickups. And I will put the map up, the new map up, so you guys can take a look at the layout.
You're Dwight now.
And then a public hearing is required for this type of change. And so I'll let you open that up for comment.
Is there a way you can put both up there?
The before, or
Well, the
which one?
other one that's kind of handwritten and this one? Yeah, there you go. Can you put them side? Any way you can put them side by side? No big deal. Look, we're gonna refer to both of them at some point, okay? These are both in the packet, so,
Yeah, they won't let me zoom out anymore.
okay. So, thank you, Kayla, for the introduction. That being said, we'd like to open the public hearing on this special event permit. Anyone who wishing to speak pro or con against the Rocktoberfest and move a venue, please come to the podium, identify yourself, and, yeah, Randy, we'll ask you questions later, trust me. You can come and talk, but we'll ask you questions later, I'm sure.
And if I could add, Mayor,
Yeah.
I did receive a call today from one of the neighboring property owners who had concerns about traffic flow and traffic management, specifically in the alleyways where they intersect, the north and south and the east and west alleys.
Vehicle traffic?
Vehicle, pedestrian,
Okay, and
the management of that.
Okay, very good. Randy, what would you like to say? I mean, sorry, introduce yourself
Yep,
and
good
address.
evening, Randy Schmitz,
Yeah.
Chair of the Rocktoberfest Committee. Just basically just wanted to state that we're wanting to move it to a bigger space. We have a bigger footprint to work with. We're not as confined in between the fence and the building. You can see on the plans there, the highlighted lines, that's the chicken scratch version, but it kind of shows where we'll put barricades across, specifically to address that. The issue as it relates to the alleyway, we've spoke to both neighbors that live on that alley. The plan is to barricade it on, let's see, Minnesota Street? Yeah, Minnesota Street, and then to also block it off immediately after Kate's driveway. So there won't be through traffic on that road, but you'll be able to still get through the main entrance off of College Avenue to get to the alley that'll remain unblocked. That makes sense. Near the generator trailer on there. The yellow line, the bottom yellow line, that's kind of where the road goes through.
There's another alley that runs.
And then the
Yeah.
whole entire parking lot to the south would also still be open and available. And we've communicated with St. Ben's regarding that as well, and they've communicated with the monastery. So, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Don't worry, we'll drag you back in here. Anybody else wishing to comment on venue of Rocktoberfest? So no one else come forward. I'm gonna close the public hearing on this and now open it to counselor or staff questions, including Jason. So as I look at the map, I want to understand correctly. In the old map, you had a single entrance and exit. And so now it's on Minnesota, same single entrance and exit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why don't you stand up there, Randy, because we're going to bug you to death, okay?
Yes, there'll be a single exit right off of Minnesota Street, kind of right in front of for business location would be.
Right there, okay, thank you.
Yep.
And so is everything around that snow fenced off?
Nope, the tent sides are secured on the long 170 foot, 170 foot long tent, both the north and south side.
So once you enter the tent, you can't leave to
Correct.
the west?
Yep, we've also rented like bicycle barricades, which I think will be a little more sturdy than snow fence and look a little better to block off where you see the yellow line.
Bicycle barricades?
Yeah.
What?
They're like bicycle racks, basically. They're meant
Just
for like
metal?
event crowd management.
Jason?
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah,
Well,
neither am
you
I.
You watch the Tour de France, when they're going through Paris, they have these bicycle barricades up.
Yeah, they're
They're
basically
metal.
metal racks
It
that
keeps
are,
people, it's better than those orange snow fences.
I don't think so.
yeah, it's a lot more secure than a snow fence would be.
Well,
You can't cut it, for one.
can I,
and you
can I
can't
see what
move
it's like? Because we've never used them before, have we? Yeah, we've never used them before in any other event,
So
so,
concerts, it's how they protect the front from the mosh pit from getting onto the stage.
oh, I get it. It looks like this. I'm just saying, I don't know what it looks like. What does it look like?
So it's like, it looks like a metal fence, but just, I don't know, pitching.
Like a picket fence
Yeah, like
that's
a picket fence.
made out of steel, and it's 8 feet long and 4 feet high.
And they're interconnected.
I'm asking because I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And I want to know what it looks like and how you maintain it and if you can break through it. And if people can walk or not. Because if it's only 8 foot long, then can you move it? And how do you move it? And can people jump over it if it's not 8, is it 8 foot high?
No,
It's 4 foot high.
it's like 4 foot high, same
Yeah.
as like
I
a
said
snow
4, I
fence.
didn't say 8. I said
8
8
foot
foot
long,
long and 4 foot high.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to figure out what it is, okay? Because we've never used these in an event here in St. Joe before, I don't believe.
I don't think so either, but in my opinion, they're a lot more secure than the orange snow fence
They-
is. and it's
They
not-
could be. These are some of the questions I have. So on the, yeah, so they look like small fences. And you can actually pick them up and move them pretty easy,
They're
can't you?
interlocked to each other.
Are they? Okay.
So like if you want to pick out a chunk, you need to pick up like 100-foot chunk. Or you'd need to start on one end and start disassembling the entire line.
Or just jump over it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can see on like either ends of this one, like this one
Okay.
has the hook that hooks into the next one, it looks like,
Okay,
something like that. I assume.
I'm looking for a thumbs up and thumbs down from Jason, because if we have people wandering over the fence with beer or handing it off to somebody like beer, because the other one, you couldn't really do that. You couldn't do it inside the old location, hand off a beer to somebody else who's on the other side of the fence. This is a 4-foot fence, you can go, hey, I just bought this, see ya.
I would argue that we had a local business that had a caution tape as a fence, a drinking establishment, and that was the barrier for over a year. So I think this is significantly more secure than that.
What was that about?
Not an event, a business, a drinking establishment. So the idea is to keep people contained in it,
Yep.
right?
I get it.
So it will do that.
I'm bringing out the concerns I have.
Mhm.
Maybe councilors are fine with this. So on the east side, what contains it over there? Is it, it's blue and
So
yellow?
we're blocking off the alley
With-
on both sides, and then the fence will round the corner, and then we have enclosed trailers, including a axe throwing trailer.
Yeah,
And then there's an additional trailer that's on the southeast side. That's not.
so
shown
the,
up yet.
The
so
question,
the blue line
what's
is
the
what?
blue line?
Yeah, what's the blue line?
What is that made up of, Randy?
It says something barricaded.
Optimal, or?
That would also be whatever type of barrier that we need it to be, whether it's snow fence or the bicycle racking, depending upon how this lays out, because this is
Oh,
our first
optional,
year.
that says
doing
optional
this.
barricade.
Correct, yep.
So we'd like that firm, wouldn't we, Jason? Like what kind it would be? Again, I'm not trying to pick on you, but
Yeah, I would say is if they're coming forward with an amendment, we would like to know
What
what's
it
being
is.
used and that it is secure.
so we need to firm that up, what it is. It's not optional, it has to be one or the other.
Okay.
Going forward, before we leave tonight, is my opinion. And it can be, if you guys are fine with bicycle fence, that's fine, but it has to be, we have to know what it is and how it's secured. Okay, so you guys have questions you want to interrupt? Because
I think the barricading to the west, where you're saying you're gonna have bicycle rack fencing,
South.
sounds good, as well as to the north. I would be okay with a snow fence to the east, because then you're looking at private residences, not a street that has vehicles and people constantly walking by.
and that
So I
closes,
like a more hardened fence to the north and to the west, which you have in place, and then to the east, that's somebody's yard, that's somebody's house,
Yeah.
so I'm fine with it being a snow fence.
Okay.
you mean north and south, right?
The
North,
and south
south,
side.
west
Yeah, north,
would
south,
be
east,
all good
west.
with like the bicycle fence,
the
which
entire
they're
area, yep.
proposing. And then to the east, since it's all private, I'm fine if they want to use snow fence.
And the snow fence does include the alley, right? You're blocking off the alleyway?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll actually use the bicycle fence for
Okay.
that part, because that's more effective, because you can't drive through it.
Bob, you had a question or two?
Yeah, the axe throwing, is that an enclosed?
Oh, yeah,
It's in-
it is.
There's no, you're not gonna be.
It's got like a wire mesh, we've had it for the
Yeah.
last two
It's
2
cool.
years. It sounds scary.
Okay, I
It
mean,
is
I'm not
scary, but you
familiar with
can't like
axe
throw it
throwing.
outside the fence at somebody. You
I
can't.
hate to see a guy
Mr.
over
Max
now
isn't
like a
gonna hit
cheated
the ice cream
Yeah, right. No.
You can try. You can actually get an axe and open the door and then go in the back and throw at somebody, but that's not really good.
Just curious.
Lots of intoxicated people
Yeah.
using those over the years without issue. Yeah, it's all enclosed, and it's monitored. They have at least 2 staff members on it all night long, so.
So I have some other vehicle traffic issues. So that you're gonna leave the College Avenue to alley open for parking to the south?
Correct. Yeah, this is, it looks like it's one big parking lot.
Yep.
And it kind of has that road in the middle. We're just using the north side of the parking lot. So we're leaving that main, there's actually 2
oh.
access points into
Yeah,
that
so
parking lot.
you're closing it off at the alley and opening it up south of that.
Correct, so you'll be able to drive all the way off of
'Cause we don't
College
see it-
Avenue to connect to the alleyway behind.
So this alley from College to, well, that whole area is closed off then?
No.
No, you'll be able to
Randy
drive,
said it.
you'll be able to drive through. We don't want to restrict
There's
like
gonna
the
be
traffic.
east-west traffic on the alley.
So the neighbors down the way to the east won't be affected by the event. They can get in and out.
The event's
So is
gonna
the-
be north of
Hold
the
on,
alley.
I'm,
You following that?
I get that. So the alley from First to this parking lot is gonna be open? I mean, this is a minified or small map.
Okay.
From First to this alley, or First to the whatever entrance that is
It's
gonna be
Is
open.
first east of this parking
First
lot?
east.
Yes. Yep, that alley right there, that remains open all the way through.
Okay,
So people that park in the south, part of this whole
South lot.
spot, are gonna have to walk down
All the way to the north.
College and then enter on the Minnesota Street side. There's only one entrance to the venue.
so, and I get that, I prefer that. I mean, I think that's a better way to control everything. But not everybody's gonna park on that lot,
No.
right? So what vehicle issues and/or pedestrian issues do you expect on Minnesota, First East, First South, or sorry, First Northeast, First Southeast? I mean, what kind of crowd are you expecting?
I don't foresee any difference between this location and the other. The other location, we had a parking lot that was consumed by it, and then people parked in both of these parking lots and then on-street parking. The church parking lot is still available, the one that's in front of the school and church, and I believe people park there no matter what, but,
Well, in the past, they haven't been able to. So are they aware they can?
I don't think it's marked that you can't. And I don't know that they would want to put signs saying that you can. I think people just will look for a spot down there, and if they find one, they'll park in it unless it says it's no parking.
What I would suggest is you make that available and known, only because they've been using this lot to park in and go over across the street. And typically, they don't go into the church parking lot knowing there's an event the other way. They don't. Where the school is and the church is. That's my opinion. I mean, so I would make that kind of a condition that people somehow realize they can park in the, in the church school area and still go east instead of west.
What time does the event start?
3 PM, and it goes until 11. We're ending it an hour earlier and starting it an hour
Okay.
earlier.
Is there an issue with church that?
Well, there'll be mass that night, but the parishioners will figure that out. They won't be happy that they can't park in either lot, because there will be Rocktoberfest folks in front of the school in that lot, and then where the event is. I mean, it's gonna be kinda obvious where people, I mean, parishioners support it, this Rocktoberfest.
I'm sure.
So they will be going into the school parking lot and park there anyway, without it necessarily having to be
No.
posted, but
Like you say, it'll be obvious, for the normal person.
In the conversation I had with St. Ben's, and St. Ben's had the conversation with the monastery, that parking lot to the south of this is the St. Ben's and the monastery parking lot, and it's marked that you can't park there, but they don't intend on enforcing it. They
that's gonna
have
be a
stated
free-for-all.
that they will, just like no different than any other
Okay.
weekend in downtown St. Joe.
So the other, maybe the last one, there's probably some more I'm gonna think of, is the reserved parking spots on the public street for drop-off pickup.
Yeah,
And so we have businesses across the street
Mhm.
that kind of rely on that parking,
okay,
which would be unusual to take it away for their business,
Okay.
for this event. And so I'm kind of opposed to that because
Well, we're
not only are you taking public street parking, but you're also taking church parking and First Avenue parking and, it's Bella, Jupiter Moon, whoever else,
Yep.
the La, the Wandering Cow, Talkaholic, everybody on that street that, these are, I don't know how many, Kayla, how many are, 6, maybe 8?
There was 7 from College Ave to the
The
alley.
alley? Okay.
in the
So I'm a
Clare-
little concerned that, parking's a pretty sensitive issue down here.
I get it, yep.
So,
Those spots we were anticipating on, we want them to be marked as no parking, but the plan was that they would be a drop-off zone. So equally, as a drop-off zone, it could be for Rocktoberfest as it could be for those businesses there, for people that can't walk that distance. So ride share, Uber, Lyft, that kind of thing. And if anybody needs a handicap parking spot,
so,
to be able to,
and so the devil's advocate says, everybody that comes downtown St. Joe wants to park right in front of where they eat.
yes.
And that's just kind of an old, I get it, it's an assumption, everybody thinks that. And so now changing that assumption to now it's a drop-off zone to get out and go to eat at Jupiter Moon or whatever, would be something that they're not used to. And I'm not saying we need to re-educate people, we do. But at the same time, this is kind of a quick, sudden, 2-week, we gotta change our methodology for one day and one event. So I'm a little uncomfortable taking away 7 spots right away from that College, Minnesota, which is really a primary spot for those businesses.
But also, all those businesses downtown utilize the church parking lot for their business people coming in. I mean, they all park in the church parking lot, whether it's the Midi or Bella Cucina or Bad Habit. So I don't see where there would be any conflict with the downtown businessmen
Well,
as far as complaining or whatever it may be.
I'm-
You know?
I'm not saying I'm not saying that they don't use it, I'm saying my perception is downtown parking is an issue. And now we have an event that's taking away downtown parking.
Well, it's taking away 7?
Yeah, 7.
7 spots, from 3 until 1.
Yeah, in a dining on a Saturday night, that's prime dining time.
I don't see
I don't
any
have an
issue.
issue with it. Do you?
I don't see no issue with it at all.
Is there any action we need to take on this, Rick?
We do, we have to, there's a resolution, right?
Well, I
No.
wanna clarify a couple things.
Or
Are
is
you
it-
done
we
with
just-
your list,
Just a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
I think so. I think those are the big things. Not knowing what the bicycle thing was and how you secure the other optional, whatever that needs to be. We need to define what that is, the blue line. Really, the alley traffic, I'm a little concerned with, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. And the 7 or so parking spots on the main avenue, which, in a great deal of one event, probably not a big deal, but at the same time, a little concerned that, we've moved it from a really secluded, secure area to now a really more open Joetown Rocks area for the first time. And what that means, not only from vehicle and pedestrian safety perspective, but also from a traffic flow perspective and security. Yeah, this is a pretty safe crowd. I get that. I mean, I've been there many, many times, and I think I sat at your table once, Klusner. And so it's a pretty safe crowd, and I get that. The only other question I would have is this event has like a non-German type band later in the day, right? Rhino?
Correct, yeah.
And
7
how
until
did-
11.
7 to 11, okay.
Yep.
And that falls within our guidelines of shutdown time and stuff? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was approved with the initial
okay.
permit.
Yeah, so I don't, isn't there a resolution here? I could be wrong.
No, we don't have a resolution in front of you. What we'd need, we would need a motion to amend the location to the new location.
Okay.
Because that would be, the previous resolution took care of that, which would be amending the location.
Okay.
So I moved to amend the changing of the location for Rocktoberfest.
Second.
So motion and second to approve the amended motion to move location. Questions or concerns? So my only question is is that we define what the blue line is. And Jason, that's you up in the PD or staff to define what that optional barricade is. I mean, if it's biking fence, whatever, but let's define it, make sure it's secure, okay?
I thought we already said snow fence.
Orange snow
It could
fence.
be either
It can be
bicycle or
either,
some
whatever,
fence on
I don't really care, but I think if you're, like you said, if it's doing snow fence on one side, snow fence in the corner, or, I'm sorry, snow fence, bike barricade and bike barricade, maybe it makes sense to just do the whole thing as bike barricade. I think that's,
I would be fine with snow fence, but
Would you?
if the
Whatever.
police department
I think
believes
just
it would be better.
work that out with them so that they know what it's gonna be and how it's gonna be, how it's gonna be contained.
All right.
Okay, motion and second, approving the location change, amending of location change. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye, opposed, motion does carry. Thank you, Randy. All right. Now the really important stuff.
That seemed pretty important.
Northland Securities. Doo, doo, doo. Tammy, you're on?
So we have Tammy
Oh,
Umdahl
sorry.
here.
Lori, Tammy, up.
Tammy Umdahl from Northland Securities is here tonight. She's been helping us with the 2023A bond issue. The debt study will come in a little bit, Kayla, second on the agenda. But first, we have the debt issue. Earlier this summer, the council approved a trigger resolution for the mayor, the city administrator, myself, to be able to go through the bond sale. The bond sale took place today, and Tammy will recap that. We also, as part of this bond issues typically over $1 million, we'll get a bond rating for. We did hire S&P Global for our bond rating, and the results were in your packet. We were confirmed at a AA- with a stable outlook, once again on this bond issue, and they affirmed that for previous bond issues where we received that rating as well. Other than that, I think I'm going to just turn it over to Tammy to walk through the bond issue.
Mayor, City Council members,
Thank you,
Tammy
Tammy.
Umdahl with Northland Securities. Northland Securities serving as the underwriter of the city's Series 2023A bonds. You have in your packet a resolution awarding the sale. Related to that, I'll speak to the final terms. The bonds are being issued to finance street and utility improvements that the city has been preparing for some time. The final amount of the bonds will be $2,370,000. That was slightly higher than the June finance plan when the council adopted the trigger resolution. There were some adjustments that the council previously approved related to project costs. With respect to the rate on the bonds and the interest, in June, the estimated amount was 3.74%. The market has actually moved since that time, and we're pleased with the final pricing. There was some back and forth this morning on that with respect to interest from investors and purchasing and banks. The final true interest cost used to evaluate 3.79%. The bonds are proposed with premium, and the premium amount, approximately $127,000, was used to reduce the principal amount of bonds being issued. Mayor, council, with that, you had I believe, the sales summary provided to you, but I will close my comments and answer any comments of the mayor and city council, and following that, I will present on the debt study.
Councilors?
No questions.
Oh, you don't have questions on this? Okay. Do we need to pass a resolution on this, or all three?
Yes, we should pass the resolution on this. It's kind of separate resolutions in each section.
Okay. So I move on resolution 2023-50, issuance of and sale of general obligation bonds.
I second that.
Motion and second, 2023-50, issuance and sale of general obligation bonds. Any further questions? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion does carry. Debt management study?
Yes, Mayor, Council. Once a year, I'm before you to provide a brief overview of the city's outstanding debt. Included in the presentation that I'm going to give, and it's just about 10 slides, are estimates for the 2023 bonds. When this presentation and the study was completed, the bonds were not yet sold, and that pricing occurred this morning. So I would just make that note, but the amounts were fairly similar. Really, and I will just direct, thank you. The purpose of the study is just to give an overview, an independent review of the city's outstanding debt and the sources of revenue. I'll talk about the study approach, an overview of the outstanding obligation and source of revenue for the repayment, and last, an overview of the city's credit rating. As Lori mentioned, as part of the process for the sale of the 2023 bonds, the city did go through a rating review, and S&P did affirm the city's rating, and I will give you some information on that. With respect to the purpose, So the city uses the issuance of debt as an important finance tool. Certainly, the city has a pay-go strategy for capital improvements when possible. When that does not provide sufficient revenue, debt has been used by the city. The city has a long practice of managing its outstanding debt. I would note that while I am standing before you and Northland reviewed this debt independently, that city staff has a very detailed accounting and management of revenue and payments when due. So it's really an ongoing tool to ensure that the city is able to meet all of its debt obligations on time. If you can go to the study approach. As noted, Northland works with your staff, with Lori, to verify ending cash balances. We also have separately and independently record of the city's outstanding debt and when those payments are due. And so really it is a collaborative approach to provide the council this summary once a year. If you can go to the next slide, slide 5. So with respect to overview, certainly the city has and does demonstrate strong financial management of its debt obligations, and that is also recognized by Standard & Poor's. That AA- rating was affirmed. If you had a chance to review the report, S&P reports to the city's strong record of well-managed finances and robust reserves. That is a specific category that they look at when rating a city or a county. Also important to note that St. Joe, while debt issuance is used for a tool in your capital improvement plan, there's rapid amortization. That's simply saying how quickly is that debt and that principal being repaid. And S&P gives credit to the city for the fact that you have rapid amortization of your debt. The other points, healthy finances and ample budgetary flexibility supporting that rating. Next slide. This chart is showing you tax levy for debt service. And what you see is 2023, 25, 26, and 27. Those were all structured that way, and this is outstanding debt, including preliminary estimates for 23 debt, which was not issued when this slide was prepared, but final results are similar. So you can see that plan change in that debt service levy and then the amortization. If you can go to the next slide. This is total debt outstanding, and so at the estimated amount at the end of 23 is not closed, but the city will pay all of its debt on time, about a little over 25 million. As that bar slopes down the bars, that is reflecting that rapid amortization of the debt as principal is being repaid and outstanding debt is being reduced. Chart 3, the next chart, shows the source of revenue for payment of the city's outstanding debt. Tax levy, like for most and many Minnesota cities, makes up the largest portion of revenue to repay that outstanding debt at 34%. Sales tax revenue for St. Joe is the next largest source. The city has outstanding tax abatement bonds that are being paid by the sales tax revenue in lieu of having to levy property taxes. Mayor, I have a
Do we use any LGA to pay off debt?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
I would note, to my knowledge, in all the cities that I work with, local government aid typically is not, just because it is not a source of revenue that can be
Yep.
pledged to the payment of the bond. If you may go to the next slide, please.
Hold on,
Go
Tim.
back to that slide.
Yeah, yep.
So sales tax revenue, Lori, that's the regional sales tax?
Yes, the St. Cloud area,
There's no other
local,
sales tax
Nope.
part of that?
correct.
So if the city was to be successful in a local option sales tax, it'll be on the ballot in, what, a year or
2024?
so?
Yep.
Then that would be a separate, I'd like that to be a separate slice of the pie.
Is that sales tax revenue?
That's sales tax revenue, so
But we'd want to break it
if
out.
we move forward with those projects that are on there at the time, then we would have the ability to issue tax abatement bonds like we did with the community center portion. So then it would be a sales tax
Then it would be
revenue from
part of
that.
this pie.
If, once we would issue
Yeah,
debt for those
okay.
projects.
All right, thanks.
This next slide is showing that amortization of debt. So this is outstanding debt estimated at the end of 23, and you can see the number of years. And so really, as you look by year 2033, 86% of the city's outstanding debt would have been repaid by that That again is what S&P in affirming the city's rating looks at as very credit positive. If you go to the next slide, slide 10. So again, the rating was affirmed. The credit rating is forward-looking opinion of Standard & Poor's, opinion of the city's credit worthiness. The rating reflects their opinion of the city's ability to repay its debt in full and on time. I have one more slide left that I'd like to show you, and this is just a breakout, and this is as of June of this year, and S&P rated Minnesota cities, which there was 307 at that point in time. And if you look at the city's credit rating of AA minus, 21% of the cities that are rated by S&P Global as of June have that rating, the AA minus. With that, that concludes my presentation, unless there are questions.
So that last rating, is it like all cities, or is it by size or anything like that?
Of the 307 cities that Minnesota cities that are rated by S&P. So not all cities in Minnesota have a rating, and not all cities that have a rating have a
Okay.
rating by S&P. There are other rating agencies.
Very good, thank you, Tammy. Kevin?
Well, let's just stay on this slide. So give me an example of a city that has a AAA rating.
The city of Victoria, Minnesota is a smaller city. The city of Apple Valley, Minnesota.
Okay.
The city of Lakeville,
Thanks.
Minnesota. Most of them are in the metro area. There are also counties. There's not many counties across the country that have AAA. We are fortunate in Minnesota that we have several of those counties.
And you've been our bond counsel for like 10 years, about?
I have. Well, Northland has, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
since 2011.
And since you've been working with us, have we always been AA minus? Have we ever been lower or higher than AA minus in your memory?
In my memory, yes, but I won't have the exact date that that upgrade occurred. And if
So
Lori
we went
doesn't
from
I
have
like
don't
it,
have
double
the
A-
exact year, but sometime after the recession in 2008, I mean, we were smaller than it was like an A+ that we were rated.
Okay, all right.
I don't know the year that we moved to AA.
All
Mayor
right.
Council, I will find that rating report and I will share that with
Yeah,
Lori.
just curious, not a big deal, AA minus is good. So chart 2, which is like 1 back or 2 back. So this is a static number, this 23 million we have outstanding now.
Estimated to be outstanding at
Yeah,
the end of
and then it just
23.
amortizes, but next year we'll be issuing more bonds and then more bonds. So pretty much every year
Yep.
we have this presentation, we see this.
Correct, because this
Yeah,
is the
which is good. I'm not saying
outstanding-
that's
yeah,
bad.
Not showing potential.
But it
new
doesn't say
debt.
we're not gonna have any debt, our debt's gonna be less than 5 million by, or outstanding bonds by 2036. We're always gonna be issuing debt.
Well, we don't have to.
That chart will probably be consistent.
Could be your
We
cheaper
could,
project.
we could call a halt to everything we do.
Mayor Council, if I may note, as part of the rating call, that is also a question that is asked of city staff, because S&P wants, while they see rapid amortization of the current outstanding debt,
Yeah,
they also seek to understand what is the city's plans in the near
Yeah,
term for new debt
good.
issuance. So
Okay.
city staff speaks to S&P, so know that at least within the 2-year time frame, that S&P's affirmation of that rating reflects what they understand to be the city's near-term new debt issuance plans.
Excuse me, is there any way you can make a chart that projects our future debt?
We can. This
As
debt
far
study
how
hasn't
that
been
would
the
look
purpose,
with,
but certainly.
superimposed on this one.
We can, and I may also, it may be that city staff is part of your budget,
Yeah, I mean, it's
presentation,
an
we may already
interesting
see
chart
that.
to see.
Yes, so I can talk, Lori and I can talk about that.
I don't know that we've ever done future bond, but we've certainly gone future capital improvement budgeting. So, okay. Nope. Good question, Bob. Kevin?
and then, and I mean, for the record, this makes a lot of sense, AA minus, what you're doing with our city, how we issue debt, how it's managed is much appreciated. Can we go to chart 1? This is the one that's bugged me the most.
Really?
Um,
Why?
So 2024 isn't on there, and I think you had a reason for that. and I compare chart one, which in our PDF packet was page 111, to what we're gonna get to when we have to approve the preliminary budget on page 125 in the PDF. That's going ahead on the agenda. And I look at, on that page, 1,493,000 is what we have to service in 2024 that we're putting into the levy. And I'm just curious, why isn't that on this bar chart in chart one?
So on the chart one, that should include 2024. So my answer to that is that chart is not reflecting the 2024 levy properly.
And so if I added it up right, and Lori can figure this out, it just, 2024 would be at 1.493 million, so that green bar would be off the chart. And I just want to make note of that.
Okay.
And I see it as an oversight, but it's still a number.
Lori, does that sound right? We're
That
off
is what
that,
that is what we're looking at for the levy for the debts, and that includes that sales tax portion, which is a,
So I just want to be on the record
Okay.
that that year is missing, and if that green bar was in 2024, it would be up
We see
near
a s-
1.5 million.
we see a spike that year.
We see a spike next year, and if the rest of these bars are correct, then it starts going down. But then that gives me, you would understand, it would give me some pause.
Understood. So the tax abatement bonds issued for the Community Event Center, it is that levy that is being canceled and supported with sales tax revenue. So that's part of it that I think Lori is
and that's like
referring to.
465,000, if I remember correctly, for 2024.
Yeah,
about that year
I'm
rate
just
in mind.
bringing it up because I want the information to be accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori, do you want to speak to the calling of the bonds?
I can do that. So the
Thank
debt
you, Tammy.
management study is for your information. We do use that going into, for the budget, reviewing those debts and the sources that are needed, where the collections are for things like special assessments. Often we get prepaid assessments when a property sells or a person wants to pay off those assessments. So we look at all those revenue sources to make sure that we have the revenue to pay the principal and interest payments that are coming due. In part of that, we also reviewed, are there potential for an early redemption of a bond, calling it defeasing a bond early. Sometimes there's certain bonds that we could call, but they're not callable for a few years if interest rates, interest savings are meet a certain threshold. There was one debt, I believe, that reached that threshold earlier in the year when we were looking at it, but we would have to have had a significant cash outflow in order to put it in a equity account, basically, or escrow account until the call date. I didn't feel like we had the cash flow to be able to do that, so I didn't recommend moving forward with that redemption. There is one debt, though, from 2017 that I am recommending we call early. This bond paid for some overlays in the, actually paving the Central Business District alley, the Phase 1, and did some of the upgrades to the water treatment plant, one in that location, down in downtown area. We do have enough money in our Fund 110, which is the old 390, the Debt Service Relief Fund, that we could use to support paying off that principal amount this year. So I'm recommending that we would transfer $136,000 from that Fund 110 and then call this bond early. It is already callable as of last year, and so we can call it as of October. I think we've given them proper notice to the bondholders. So in an effort to look at what our debt levy is going to be in the future, it is one way that we're able to maintain some of that debt levy and not show some of those spikes that are occurring.
And the other 34,000 will come from,
It's already in that fund, so there would have been, possibly prepaid assessments along the way. When the project fund, when the project was closed out, there might have been contingency money that we moved into the bond fund, so it's given us funds to, build up that cash balance a little bit. Now, there still will be some assessments outstanding for this project that, property owners were given 10 years to pay those assessments, so there still will be some that will be paid over that 10 years. Those assessments will then go into the Fund 110, going back in there into that debt service relief. So if you're agreeable, I have Resolution 2023-49 to call that debt early and then approving the transfer of $136,000.
so moved.
Second.
Motion and second, resolution 2023-49, redemption of the outstanding general obligation bonds. Further questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion does carry. Thanks, Lori. Thank you, Tammy. Very good. Item 7, Lori, you're still on
Thanks,
duty.
Kayla, can you pull up the
Prelim
budget
budget,
presentation?
yep.
So I put together a short presentation here just to kind of summarize where we're at with the preliminary budget. First of all, state law here in Minnesota is we have to adopt the preliminary budget for the governmental funds and the associated levies that might be needed for that budget has to be adopted by September 30th. In addition, the council needs to set the public hearing date in December in which we'll discuss the final proposed levy and budgets. For this year, I'm proposing that to be December 4th. We usually do the first meeting in December for that public hearing. The final budget adoption date would be, it's always December 28th, so whatever the second meeting in December is typically the last meeting that we would adopt the final budget and levy. Here at the preliminary levy, or level, we're setting that levy in the the levy is that we're setting now, it can be reduced by December, cannot be increased unless there's an extraordinary, extreme event that happens, some catastrophe type thing, or if there was a bond referendum that the community had proposed. We don't have such items on the agenda here this fall, so I assume that, we'll be at the same level or less in December. So if we go to this page, just kind of summarizing where the levies are at for the preliminary and the impact on the tax rates. I reached out to Stearns County Assessor's Office, and they're telling me that they're seeing about a 7% increase in residential tax capacity increases this year. Last year, I think we were at like 17-18%. So a little bit less this year, and I think that's what surrounding communities are seeing as well. Commercial and industrial, they're seeing about a 3% increase. Some of that is going to be absorbed by, Trobix. Tax abatement comes online in 2024 too. So some of the commercial industrial increases is really kind of getting absorbed into that tax abatement that the council approved in 2019. So we have 3 different levies that we set each year. There's the general levy that we're all used to. We call it the urban levy. It's just the properties that were not annexed in 2019 are called the urban levy. When we annexed some of the township in 2019, we set up a separate tax rate, so we called it a rural tax rate. The residential's tax rate changes depending on what the urban tax rate does. That's how their tax rate fluctuates. The rural, commercial and industrial tax properties they agreed to like a 6.79% increase each year until they get up to the city's urban tax rate. So eventually, that classification can go away because they'll be at the same level as whatever the city's urban rate is. But for right now, we're still stepping up there, getting close. And when I look at those, the general tax rate, when we're looking at the rural, you have to add the debt levies into the urban tax rate to really get the full impact of the comparison. And right now, the budget is looking like the tax rate needs to increase from a 59.7% tax rate up to a 65% tax rate. So a little bit of a jump. It's about 5.3% more in the tax rate. That's taken into account the tax capacity, the market value increases that the county is telling us. On the next slide, I have the impact of what that looks like to some homeowners and business as well. We usually look at about a $250,000 home, and their taxes with this preliminary rate is estimated to increase $125,000 or $125,000 for that homeowner. Good luck. No, $125 increase for the year. What I don't have incorporated, the state did change some of the homestead credits and actually even the tax rates onto the businesses. I didn't do those adjustments in the slide, so this is the old formula, comparing the old formula on what the impact would be for the taxes. So with the new formula, I would anticipate the increase would actually be a little bit lower. All things being static.
Having said that it could be lower, going back to that slide, the one before.
Yeah.
No, I meant the one that we were just on. That static market value, taxable market value doesn't change on the house.
For comparison's sake,
Yeah. No,
we're
I
not
get it.
showing that, but the county is telling us about a 7%
Right.
increase.
So this will go up.
If they
given
get that, if they get that
Yeah.
7% adjustment.
Okay.
And property owners, just for the public's knowledge, so those market values, if there's a disagreement on what those market values are,
Right.
the time to discuss those is with the county assessor when we do the Board of Equalization hearings, and those are usually in April, May. They do get published, so the time has expired for an argument on that market value that's gonna show up on their tax statement in November is what it's proposed to be. And I also would wanna remind homeowners that the homestead credit, they have to make sure that their homestead is active, and if it is not, say they refinanced a home, change in, maybe if there's a divorce or a death or something changed on the homeowner's deed, you wanna make sure that you get your homestead application in before December 15th. Otherwise, you're gonna see a much larger jump on your taxes.
So, and then I do have a question for the slide before this one, or a comment. So, in looking at the debt levy line item from 1.3 up to 1.493, that's, despite what we had here from Northland and Tammy with AA- rating and those types of things, I just, whether it's in a work session or some other kind of planning going forward, how we finance stuff. Do we lease, Ryan, is there anything in that we lease instead of just buy it and issue a bond?
Very little.
No, there are no leases in the city more. They used to lease squad cars.
Yeah, and there might be.
Patrol cars, but that
There's
didn't work
obviously
out.
pluses and minuses to leasing, but leasing, I just want to look at how we're issuing debt. And I know we're issuing it for the right reasons, but we just don't, with interest rates that are higher now than they were 2 years ago and a year ago, this that's a big number. And, so I'm aware of that. And then the preliminary levy of 4.3 million at the bottom for 2024, that's within the context, and I'm going to page 125 of the agenda packet, which is, I think, part of the resolution that we'll be passing. That's a component of the total governmental expenditure budget of 10.1 million, yes?
Correct?
So of the 10.1 million that we're gonna spend next year for everything, we're asking the residents via this tax levy to pay 4.3.
That is correct.
And the rest of it comes from LGA and,
LGA, might be reserves. There's East Park, we're getting almost $1 million in grant money to
Okay.
do East Park, so that's included in there.
so I just wanted to put that into context, that we're gonna spend over 10 million, and we're asking the residents and the businesses to pay 4.3.
That is correct.
I'm done.
Okay, if we go down, I have the hard numbers where you were talking about the 10 million in the budget. So this is all the governmental funds, so this would be the general funds, special revenue funds, of which the EDA, fire department, those are special revenue funds, along with a few other smaller ones. Also, I should say the sales tax, local option sales taxes, special revenue, park board, those are all special revenue funds. So they're, the revenues that we generate there go for a specific purpose that, that we're allowed to do with those funds. Debt service will be obviously any of the debts like Tammy had reviewed. And then capital project funds, it doesn't look like there's a large budget in here, and that is because when we do a capital project, we do bidding, and through that bid process, we're accepting what those costs are in those capital projects. So I don't put those estimates in the budget. We, for comparison's sake, we handle those when we bid out those projects. We do know what those estimated costs are when we go into issuing the debts, so, but the debts that are shown there are really just the debts that we have issued, and that does include the 2023 bonds that we just did tonight. I don't know if you have any questions in particular on here. We're gonna go through a little bit on what these numbers, what's some of the things that are included in these numbers here. So in the preliminary budget, just on a high level, what's in the budget, the LELS and the AFSCME union contracts were settled, one earlier this year, one in December last year. Those contracts go through December 31st of 2025. So we took into account any benefits that were spelled out in those contracts. And those contracts also guaranteed 3% general increase from the compensation study that we did last December. On the agenda tonight is the David Drown study that we did, the pay equity update, and with that we had to do a comparison for the compensation as well to make sure that we're still in the market. So the budget numbers reflect what David's going to be presenting tonight on that. It is what the council has reviewed in workshops in the past, so should be no surprise. It is what you've seen before. The budget includes an additional full-time staff and an additional part-time staff in recreation. The full-time staff is in public works. And with that, there's also a couple positions that are shown as promotions in there, not might be a new position and a job classification, but we're showing it as a promotion from current staff versus hiring new in those positions. So election judges, with the presidential election year, we have 3 elections that Kayla gets to handle next year. So in March, we'll have the presidential primary, and then in August, the primary election, in November, the general election. Presidential elections in those years typically are busier, and so might require more judges. So we're anticipating what we think we need for the 3 precincts that we're operating now. When we did the annexation in 2019, there was a property tax sharing, so St. Joseph Township, there was agreement that we were gonna remit property taxes back to them over a 5-year period, so that they weren't, they just weren't at a tax loss all of a sudden in 1 year. They were able to scale back and be sufficient on their own. So that actually goes through till 2025, when we're looking at tax years. And so, but there's a reduction every year. It went from like 80-20, or 80-60, 40-20, until we're done. So there was a little bit of a savings there for the city in the budget in that respect. On the flip side, the fire department, we had 5 years where the township got to get the market value of those annexed properties. And over a 5-year period, they scaled back where the city picked up that market value and the township dropped off that market value. In 2024, now the city will be fully paying for those annexed properties and that market value. So a couple things. So LGA is increasing for next year. One of the goals set by the council a few years ago is to try to put 200,000 of the LGA in the Fund 110 to help with some small projects that's really hard to, the unforeseen things that happen to come up. In 2023, we were only able to put 10,000 in there. So your 2024 proposed budget, I have the 200,000 in there, so 190,000 of that money is, sent there. That could be in the general fund.
So we'll get another 10,000.
Before the final. So that is one area of discussion, in the future.
did.
We can look at that number.
Yeah.
That can help with the tax rate. The ARPA money, we have about 188,000 that has not been earmarked for a particular project, and that has to be spent by the end of 2024. So again, that's going to be a discussion item on what we want to do with those remaining funds. The ARPA is part of the general fund. It gets combined into the general fund. And our one-time public safety aid of $312,000 will be arriving the end of this December. There is no deadline on when we have to spend it. And we do not have any plans right now on what we're going to do with that aid. So it was not incorporated into covering any expenses in the budget proposal. So again, it could be a discussion item the council wants to look at to see maybe there's some staffing positions that you want to cover, but keep in mind it's one-time money, so eventually we got to pick it up in the levy somewhere.
Lori, were they specific on what that meant, public safety aid? Could it be
They
public
did.
works? Could it be fire? Could it be police? Could it be?
It has to be public safety related.
So
Police,
close as it
fire,
is?
there could be, public safety really is even building inspections.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I know it was pretty vague, but I thought they might have fine-tuned it a little bit. So,
yeah, they
okay.
gave us suggestions of what the intent was for that, a lot of
Yeah.
like the mental health and helping with, FMLA claims that were happening, disability claims.
Okay.
Can we,
I know it cannot be used for purchases of buildings.
can we buy a squad car?
We can.
We could.
Okay.
You cannot fund
could lease one,
pensions,
too.
but you could pay for, additional staffing that you might need to help
Yeah.
with that public safety.
Well, again, I'm not in favor of staffing because it's a one-time budget thing, but it could be cameras, it
Squad
could be
car,
squad car, it
squad
could be
equipment, I mean,
grass.
the
Mhm.
or
budget's
the other
got,
fire. Okay. Well, yeah, we should have a discussion on that.
for sure.
And then finally, the Trobix abatement we already discussed. The biggest impact really is gonna come from staffing, and a municipality is typically roughly around 75% is covered by benefits, staff and wages and benefits. We're more of a service type entity, and so that is why that percentage is so high. And so earlier this year, we kind of went through workshops of where the staffing is, and on the next slide is the organization chart that we had presented you and went through each of the departments. And I kind of summarized where the staffing is in each of the departments in the proposed budget for 2024. So again, we're looking at an increase of 1 staff position from 30 to 31 full-time staff. Adding a part-time position, so going from 2 part-time to 3, and then the same for the, seasonals, recreational staff. Election judges, some additional time was put in there, and the planning intern was in the 2023 budget. We didn't fill that this year, but we do have it still in 2024 as a need. Capital purchases, and this is in the packet as well, so I'm not gonna read all of them, but there's what we're looking at for 2024 for equipment purchases. Now, we do a 5-year capital equipment plan replacement, so we try to put some money away each year. That goes into a separate fund that we keep that reserves, those reserves in, so when the time comes to make those purchases, we have the cash to be able to do so. We also supplement the capital equipment budget with 2 equipment certificates, one of which you issued tonight. The other one will come due in 2025. So we do incorporate those equipment certificates into the capital budget. So we don't set the levy as high as what it could be, because we assume those 2 equipment certificates are gonna continue rolling every 5 years.
So on this slide, the one-time $312,000 from the state, you've not allocated any of that towards any of this?
I've
That
not
just-
allocated to anything.
It just sits out there. Is it sitting out there, is it on the balance sheet? It's not a revenue item for 2024, because we've already, we're gonna get it by the end, we already have it? We're gonna get it.
We're getting it in December. So it is not included in the budget numbers, period.
Got it, okay.
The area cities, they just briefly kind of talked about what they're looking at for the levy change. And I realize this is the levy change, not necessarily the tax rates, because the tax capacity that market value needs to be incorporated in there. So you can see where the area cities are. I also looked at Stearns County, what they're proposing. So they're proposing a small increase for the levy of 2.5%, but they're seeing a tax capacity increase of about 10.5%. So the county is estimating a decrease in their tax rate of about 7%. So we're looking at a 5% increase, they're looking at a 7% decrease. So so homeowners here, if everything was static and the same, they would actually have a decrease in their taxes. I do not know what the ISD 742 is going to do yet either, so theirs kind of works a little differently. They get their numbers from the state.
The independent school district, they can also increase taxes, can't they? They have
Yeah,
the
they're
authority to levy taxes.
They're limited by what the state will allow, and so I don't know what that state number is
Yeah.
yet.
I just know they have the authority to do it. I don't know what that number is either.
So that's the other piece to the puzzle, the big piece to the puzzle for our taxpayers here in St. Joseph. For tonight, here are the actions to consider. The resolution to adopt the preliminary governmental budget and the proposed taxes collectible in 2024. We also need to verbally state when that public hearing will be, if you're agreeable to December 4th, and that will be on the tax statements that will come out in November. Just as a reminder, taxpayers can call City Hall at any time and ask questions about what's coming up in the budget, and they can also mail in comments if they can't get here in person.
Councilors, questions?
I'm okay with the preliminary budget, except for adding any staff in 2024. That's where our cost items are, big time. For 2024, I can't agree with any staffs. We're talking promotion, we're not adding staff, but we're just, the way the police chief talked about his, if you give them more money, they can do the job. I don't buy all that. That's for a future argument or discussion. But, I'm okay with the preliminary without the additional staff
Okay.
at this time.
And my comment would be, we need an additional 20 hours of park and rec, without a doubt. Rhonda's overworked, underpaid, doing more than she can do, and we need another staff
That,
person.
that would I be okay with.
You just
but-
said no, Bob.
Well, he might have been
Just kidding.
permanent
I get
full-time
it, I get
staff.
it, I get it, I understand. But I think, we talked about that. I mean, Rhonda's really
Yeah.
overworked, underpaid, and she
Right,
does need
She doesn't
another.
want any more hours,
Well, she doesn't want any more hours. I think she's retired, actually, but,
yeah. But,
okay. I have one question, and this has to do with some of the new laws that were passed. I don't know what it's called. The-
Employee safe.
Yeah, that one,
Safety and
that one,
sick
that
leave.
one. Like, how do we allocate for what that is?
So
Or
we're
have
looking
we
at
alloc-
it, the
have
way
we
that
alloc-
we're, the way that we're looking at it in the budget is we're gonna have to give that leave. Departments need to look, we did actually let them know that they're, they might lose up to 80 hours per staff for that safety, the ESSL leave. We have that incorporated into the budget. It also will roll over to temporary staff, seasonal staff.
Yep.
All
We have
staff
a-
get this, and so we have it
You have the number
budgeted
based
that
on
we're gonna
hours?
get it so that it carry over, we don't
Okay.
carry over and not do the payout at the end of the year.
Okay. Again, I'm not sure exactly how it works or anything, but I just know that that's gonna be effective in 2024.
Correct?
And so we have to allocate it. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but we have to allocate that in the budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a funny one. I mean, that's really the only question I had, it's
How
effective, I'm not
big is
sure when in 2024, but I know that,
January 1st,
is it really?
it is.
Okay, that's even worse. No offense intended, I'm not, well, it's a funny rule that it's covered by other things as well, but I don't know how we incorporate it. Okay. You're looking for a motion adopting current budget proposed?
Mhm.
So I'll move Resolution 2023-52, preliminary 2024 budget, tax levy collectible in 2024.
I'll second that with the addition of the eliminating any full-time staff for 2024.
We-
And with the park department's part-timer.
Well, you can't amend my motion. You can second it.
Yeah, and I did, I seconded it.
Okay,
and I
so
amended
second.
it, and I put an amendment in there right away.
It's not how it works, Bob.
Yeah, that's how it works.
No, it isn't. When we
It
get to,
does.
when we get to the final budget, you can remove those pieces.
Right.
We're adopting it as it is today.
Preliminary.
Preliminary budget. Motion and second on Resolution
You're wrong.
2023-52, adopting
wrong.
the preliminary budget. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Motion prevails.
yeah, you're wrong, Rick. I can amend any motion.
Okay. So
And
our
you
public
should
hearing for the
give
final
me the-
budget will be December 4th at 6 PM in St. Joe City Chambers. Will the rest of the information be published? Like, they can call and they can we put that on the city site or in a newsletter or something? I mean, we're not gonna get another newsletter in November?
We,
Yeah,
one thing I forgot to mention, so we have the ClearGov that, the website that, people can access to go see what the budget, changes are, what's in the budget. That'll be available in a couple weeks. We will publish that on the website and on the social media when it's available. We're working on getting the data uploaded and converted into that website.
okay. Okay, what are we on? Number 8, classification compensation. David?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'll try to make this fairly brief here. I did put the PowerPoint that was prepared by David Drown Associates in your packet. However, I will not go through that item by item. I think we'll kind of hit the high points of it in here. So, as you're aware, David Drown Associates was hired to complete this classification and compensation study for the city. And they were tasked with 4 items. One is to ensure that the positions are classified to meet FLSA guidelines. 2, to ensure that the pay is competitive and equitably structured. 3, to establish policies and procedures to keep the system up to date. And finally, 4, to ensure that the compensation system is easy to understand and administer. I guess it's maybe as easy as possible. I don't know if it's going to be easy, but as easy as possible. So DDA gathered data from 28 comparable cities in the city of St. Joseph, that the city of St. Joseph competes with for talent and are in our area. So positions were included for comparison that matched at least 80% of the duties of the St. Joseph positions. So the analysis showed us a couple of things here. One is that 2 employees are currently paid above the salary range maximum, and 7 employees were paid below the salary range minimum. So with that, the system was, the structure was, a new structure was calculated, and the proposed classification system and proposed pay scale results with 1 position still under market and the remaining 6 at slightly above market. The 2 positions that are currently over market, the recommendation in there was to freeze those 2 positions. However, both those positions are union and are covered under the contract and required for to get a 3% cost of living. So with that, so of the 7 positions that were under the minimum, 5 of those were patrol officer positions. 1 was the administrative assistant, and 1 was the Parks and Rec part-time position. So those, all of those except for the Parks and Rec one will be then at or slightly above market. So with that, the proposed classification and compensation scale as presented would be an increase of roughly $120,000 over the 2023 compensation costs. And as Finance Director Bartlett alluded to earlier, that is included in what was put in the preliminary levy for tonight. So with that, I will take any questions that the council has. Otherwise, what I need from the council tonight is a motion to accept the classification and compensation study.
I'll move to accept the pay equity compensation study.
Motion and second, accepting classification compensation study. Questions?
Not at this time.
I just have one. When DDA gathered information, how much above and below city of St. Joe, like population?
Oh,
I mean, like, how many cities above 7 grand? How many cities below 7 grand?
I don't have it broken out how many were above and below, but the majority of them.
Well, I do, but I don't know how big they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the list, I just don't know who's above and below. Kind of like Sauk Rapids is above, Spring Lake Park's gotta be above, Zimmerman's gotta be above. Little Falls probably about the same, but probably a little bigger. But then Foley's gotta be smaller, Big Lake, about the same, maybe Avon much smaller. So I'm just kind of
Yeah, I guess,
wondering how that, the data falls across this wide range of cities.
I guess I can't answer as far as which ones specifically were above and below and where we rate in that. I guess what I can tell you is that of the 28 cities that were selected, 2 criteria were really looked at. One is that they were similar in size.
Okay.
You know, in meaning within if I remember correctly, within about 20% of our population. And then also cities that we compete with for talent, meaning cities that could be significantly larger than us, or even smaller than us, but are within such a proximity that we'd be competing with them for talent. For example, Sauk Rapids, St. Cloud, Waite Park, and those are larger than us. However, but since they're so close to us, we do compete with them for talent.
And just so another point of interest, the other thing I noticed was that a lot of them were like outstate Minnesota, not near the metro area. And if that had any bearing on.
Well, it does, because we are considered more, because we're part of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, we are considered an outstate city, not a
Okay.
metro city.
Okay. Thank you. Motion and second, accepting classification compensation study. Any other question? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does indeed carry. Thank you, David. All right, department reports. Anybody going once, going twice?
Just one thing, just a reminder of our strategic planning
And
next week.
And we got a little handout, right? That's,
That's based off of our last one. That's the playbook that we talked about for the
Yep.
recap of that, so.
What date is that?
26. our retreat on the twenty-sixth, right?
26th, yeah. 1 week from tomorrow,
Yeah,
That starts at 4.
4 o'clock.
can you make that?
Meeting here.
Okay, I have, so I'm moving on, I'm not sure what we're on now. Number 10, mayor and council reports. So I have two things. Number one, I received this in the mail, and Kayla, I'll give you a copy of this. It's the Great River Children's Museum. They're gonna have an open house, a construction open house or celebration. I'm not sure if it's done or not or where they're at, but it's Saturday, October 7th from 10 to 2. It's downtown in St. Cloud. And they're gonna walk through what they've done and what their plan is. And the other thing, and I think this is kind of a council decision, David and I, along with Eric Putnam and CSB, met with Metro Bus to talk about busing plans, about guaranteed routes up here. And, you know, Bob and I have been through this before, and I think it's been like 3 times before, and it's always too expensive. But Metro Bus is redoing its routes now, so they wanted us to consider mapping out a dedicated route to St. Joe. And they asked for a commitment, and I said we couldn't commit until we know what the cost is. And I'm not sure if you communicated with them, but I think we communicated the same thing with CSB and SGU, that it's tough for us to commit to more cost without knowing what it is. They want us to commit to it without knowing what the cost is so they can generate a route out here. And I said, well, generate the route and tell us what the cost is, and we'll tell you if we can afford it. You know, it's kind of the chicken or egg kind of thing. So we expect more discussion, but we've got CSB's kind of commitment to go forward. We're asking for the monastery's commitment to go forward, and then we'll come back with some numbers, we hope. But this is a dedicated route because they're expanding. I think they're putting a station on the west side of St. Cloud or St. Wade Park or something, which will help dedicated routes this way. Just informational at this point. We'll have some more follow-up as that moves forward.
And before we commit, I'd like to know where the money's gonna come from
Yeah,
when we do
yeah.
commit.
And that's
Because
why-
for right now,
Yeah.
I have no clue where
Well-
we would come up with, I'm gonna say I'm just gonna use a fictitious number, $500,000, that's probably even low.
I don't think that's fictitious at all.
Well,
I think the last time it was 600,000.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm with you, Bob. It's tough for us to know, it's tough to us to commit for this without knowing exactly what kind of money we're talking about.
yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be a good service. We have enough people that would use it. I just don't know how we'd pay for it. So, questions, counselors, anything going on? The APO meeting was delayed 1 week. It's gonna be this Thursday, and it wasn't last Thursday. So we'll figure out, that's again, another ongoing discussion about, do we pay for the Southwest Metro? Does everybody pay for it, or how do we pay for it? So that's gonna be an ongoing discussion at the end of this year, early next year. And I told them, we don't have it in the budget right now, so we're gonna have some more discussion on that. Anything else? Anybody? Item 11? Yeah, item 11.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Second, motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.